video games, girls, relationships, we've talked about all that stuff. But now it's time to get to the one topic that's one of my personal favorites. God. For a good portion of my middle school years, my parents would wake me up every Sunday and send me to Sunday school. See, on Sunday mornings, I was not the happiest camper, okay? Because Monday through Friday, I had to wake up early to go to school, and then Saturdays was all about Saturday morning cartoons, especially in the 90s. You know, we had Darkwing Duck, we had Tiny Toons, we had Pinky and the Brain, X-Men. Some of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So on Sunday morning, when all the other kids are like, praise Jesus, I'm sitting there like, so one Sunday, just to be, you know, disruptive, I guess you could say, I raised my hand. I'm like, teacher, I got a question. And the teacher's like, yes, young man, what's your question? Like, so God created the earth and everything, right? Yes, young man, God created the heavens and the earth and everything that dwells within it. So if God created everything, who created God? Can you tell me that? God created God. See, that answer didn't sit well with me back then, because I was expecting like an explanation that was the equivalent of steak, and she was just giving me like a slice of bread. How do you really argue with that? You can't really argue with that, especially, you know, in middle school. You assume the teacher knows 10 times more than you, so yeah, you really can't argue with that. But it didn't sit right with me for a while, because it was just too simplistic. You know, I see how complicated everything works, and it was just almost too simplistic for me at the time. There's a whole bunch of beliefs out there. There's the belief in God, there's the belief in the Big Bang, there's the belief that God created the Big Bang, there's the belief that the human brain is too limited to even begin to understand the capacity of a God. I've heard a lot of different beliefs. On the topic of God, I've noticed that interpretation and observation are pretty big. When you're going about your day, there's a lot of things to observe. You know, in all the years that we've been on this planet, there's a lot to observe. Alright, so let's try a little experiment here. You guys see that Yoshi and Mario sprite back there? Is it logical for me to say somebody made that? That thing is awesome. I mean, just look at it. Is that not the coolest thing you've seen all day? See, it's easy to look at something like that and just be like, oh, that's awesome, and go about your day. But when you really stop and look at it and break it down, you start thinking, okay, there's about 200 and something blocks there. You had to get that wood from somewhere. There's also paint that probably went into this whole process. So somebody had to buy that paint. Somebody had to lay those blocks out. Somebody had to paint those blocks. And once that's all done, I mean, there's a design there. So somebody had to be following some kind of design. Somebody had to glue all that stuff together. And then it's up here in this room. So somebody had to put it there. I mean, this didn't just appear out of thin air. I mean, look at it. That thing is pretty complex. Looks like somebody just grabbed Mario and Yoshi right off the screen and plopped them in real life. And it's pretty logical for me to say that somebody made that. It's also logical to say that whoever did that is a genius and probably absurdly good looking. That's logical. See, the more complex something is just more evidence added on that somewhere along the line there was a creator. A creation demands a creator. A building, that's proof that somewhere there's a builder. If you see a painting, that's proof somewhere there's a painter. Whether I meet this person or not is irrelevant. The creation proves the existence of some kind of creator somewhere. Now that's some logics. Think about it. Just the fact that I exist is proof that somewhere at some point in the timeline that there was a man and a woman that got together, and that's just proof. I'm living proof of it, you're living proof of it. You don't have to meet my parents, I don't have to meet your parents. The fact that you exist, the fact that I exist, that's enough proof right there. I'm gonna reanimate a quick example that I used in the past because I really like this example. Computers. So you have man. Man creates computer. Computers can talk to each other. Man is the creator, existing outside of the creation. Is how it tends to work. You still with me? The other parallel that I like on the topic of the whole man and computer analogy is two people arguing over whether God exists or not is similar to two computers arguing whether or not man exists. It could sit there arguing all they want. I mean, even computers. Where did computers come from? Maybe there was an explosion in some computer factory somewhere, and then all of a sudden we got computers. So it should be pretty clear what side of this I'm on here, but let me tell you guys real quick what I believe. Now, you know, I drive down the street, I look up in the sky, I see those clouds, I see the grass, I see dirt, I see animals, I see just beautiful landscapes, I see beautiful sunsets. Some of you guys know I travel from time to time, I make the video blogs, and I sit back and I look at all the intricacies that are involved, from everything from these big old mountain and huge sceneries down to the little insects. I see all this stuff and I'm just like, this had to come from somewhere, you know. I've seen explosions, I've seen what explosions produce. The last time I heard anybody talk on this topic, they said there's not a single shred of evidence that God exists. I don't know, dude. I think sometimes it might just come down to where you point your attention, because let's just say I plopped you into this planet at 18 years old and all I'm showing you is war and people dying and diseases and all this other stuff, and your attention is only pointed in that direction. But if I take the same person, plop them on this planet and show them all kinds of other stuff, and again, observation, interpretation, that's big. But be mindful of where you're pointing your attention, because the way I see things, if there isn't a God, then we're just on this rock, hurtling through space at a few thousand miles an hour, and nobody's driving. But if there is a God, then it's probably a good idea to find out who he is and what he wants ASAP. I'm just saying.